My fiancé said. The wedding is off unless you put your house, car, and even your savings in my name. I calmly said I'd think about it. That night, I changed the locks and donated his wedding suit. He found out the next day, when he showed up for his fitting and a stranger was wearing his jacket. My fiancé, Samuel, sat across from me, cool as a cucumber, and delivered an ultimatum that would turn your stomach. The wedding is off, Lily, he said, like he was asking about dinner plans, unless you put the condo, the car, and your savings, all of it, in my name. We were just 3 months from our October wedding, and the man I was supposed to marry had just turned our future into a hostage negotiation. He thought he had me cornered, but what he actually did was awaken a fury he could never have imagined. By the time he showed up for his final suit fitting, a complete stranger would be wearing his $5,000 Tom Ford jacket. You're probably wondering, what the hell happened next? But let me back up, because to truly get why that moment hit me so hard, you need to know who I was before Samuel Brennan walked into my life and, honestly, mistook my success for an opportunity. I'm Lily Morgan, 33, a corporate real estate attorney right here in Denver. That condo Samuel wanted? I bought it at 27, with money I'd saved from years of brutal work at a law firm that didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for women in commercial real estate. The Range Rover he demanded? Cash, at 31. $38,000 I'd squirreled away because I hated debt. I hated the idea of anyone having leverage over something I needed. And my 6-figure savings account? That took a decade to build. Every single dollar was a vacation I skipped, a dinner out I said no to, a weekend I worked while my friends were out living their lives. Every single dollar had a story, a choice I made to prioritize security over spontaneity. I learned about financial independence from my mom, but not in the way you usually learn things from your parents. I learned it from watching what happens when you don't have it. My mom died when I was 25, just before I passed the bar. Ovarian cancer. It was fast, brutal. In those final weeks, she grabbed my hand, her voice barely a whisper, and said something I'll never, ever forget. Lily, wealth isn't about what you earn. It's about what you keep and what you protect. Don't ever let anyone make you feel guilty for building something solid. And never, ever give someone else control over what you've built. She was talking about my dad, though she didn't say his name. He left when I was 12, and my mom discovered she had nothing in her own name. No credit cards, no savings without his signature, no property. At 42, she had to start from absolute scratch. She rebuilt herself, became successful, but she never forgot that vulnerability, that powerlessness, that sick feeling of trusting someone with everything, only for them to leave you with nothing. So, when I bought my condo at 27, I was honoring her. The market dipped just enough, but I emptied my savings, took on a mortgage that genuinely terrified me. My colleagues thought I was nuts. Rent for a few more years, they'd say. Build more cushion. But I could hear Mom's voice, clear as day. I knew what I had to do. For the next 4 years, I lived like a college student in a beautiful space. IKEA furniture, no vacations, cooking every single night. Every raise, every bonus, every tax refund went straight to that mortgage. My best friend, Rachel, watched all of this. We met in law school, bonded over being two of the few women in corporate law, and stayed tight even as our careers went different ways. She went into public interest, made a fraction of what I did, and seemed perfectly happy with a roommate and 2 cats. You're 30, and you haven't left Colorado in 4 years, she'd tell me during our Sunday trail runs. You're missing your life. I'd just correct her. No, Ratch. I'm building my life. There's a difference. And when I made that final mortgage payment at 31, I sat alone in my condo and just cried. Tears of pure relief. Tears of freedom. The kind that hit you when you actually do something you weren't sure was possible. That condo was mine. Every tile, every window, every square foot belonged to me because I'd earned it. Then I bought the Range Rover, cash. Rachel thought I was insane again. Just finance it. Interest rates are low. But I didn't want payments, didn't want debt. I wanted to know that if everything crumbled tomorrow, I still had a home and a car no one could touch. By 32, I had that 6-figure savings account, and I was on the partner track at a top firm. I knew my stuff. Senior partners called me for advice. Clients specifically requested me. But, I'll admit, I was also lonely. In a way I didn't tell anyone. I'd come home to that beautiful, empty condo and wonder, had I made the wrong choices? That's exactly the state I was in when I met Samuel Brennan. 18 months ago, at a charity gala. He was 35, charming, working in what he called finance consulting, which I later learned meant advising startups that never actually secured funding. But those first few months, they felt effortless. He'd bring me coffee during late nights at the office, listen intently when I talked about tough cases. He seemed genuinely impressed by my career, by what I'd built, by the fact I owned property. He made me feel seen, like someone finally appreciated the sheer work behind the success. Rachel, though, she was skeptical from day one. She'd pull me aside at brunch. There's something performative about him, Lily. Watch how he talks about you to other people. It's always about what you have, not who you are. But I was tired of being alone. Tired of being the only single attorney at firm events. Tired of coming home to silence. So, I ignored the small warning signs. The way he always steered conversations back to my assets. How he'd casually say our place or our car, when, legally, everything was mine. How he never offered to split expenses equally, but always had money for expensive clothes and gadgets he didn't need. 10 months in, he moved into my condo. His lease was up, and it felt natural. He started contributing $1,500 a month for utilities and groceries, which felt fair since I owned the place outright. But things shifted fast. My minimalist aesthetic suddenly became cold and corporate. He started redecorating without asking, bringing home furniture I never wanted, inviting his friends over constantly for poker nights that left beer stains on my carefully maintained coffee table. Then came the comments about my career. I worked too much. His buddy's girlfriend was a yoga instructor with better work-life balance. Maybe I should consider less stressful estate planning. Each comment felt small on its own, but together, they formed a pattern I was too close, too desperate, to see. Then, 8 months ago, I proposed to him. Yes, I got down on one knee at our favorite restaurant and presented a ring that cost 2 months of my salary. He cried, said yes, and immediately started posting photos with captions like, "Set for life," and "Found my forever home." Not forever person, but forever home. That should have registered as strange, right? But I was caught up in wedding planning, throwing myself into it with the same intensity one brought to a major legal case. My half of the expenses climbed to $35,000. The venue, the photographer, the caterer, the string quartet. Samuel would occasionally mention costs, but never offered to split anything equally. And I told myself, it's fine, I earn more. Rachel's skepticism intensified. She'd watch him at dinner parties, how he'd talk about our assets when everything was legally mine. How conversations always circled back to my condo value or my savings, never my actual achievements. "He's not in love with you," she said one night, after too much wine. "He's in love with what you've built." I didn't want to hear it. I was 3 months away from not being alone anymore, from having someone to come home to, from finally having what everyone else seemed to have so easily. And then Samuel sat down in my home office and delivered his ultimatum. Transfer the condo. Transfer the car. Give him access to my savings. All of it. Or the wedding was off. I looked at him, sitting across my desk, the desk I'd bought with my first bonus, in the office I'd created, in the condo I'd purchased alone. And something inside me just crystallized. He didn't want to build a life with me. He wanted to take possession of the life I'd already built. And he was using our wedding, our supposed future, our relationship itself, as leverage to make it happen. "Let me think about it," I said, my voice eerily steady. He stood up, confident he'd won. "Don't take too long. We've got vendor deadlines." After he left, I sat there for a long time, thinking about my mother's words, about what she'd warned me to protect, about the difference between partnership and possession. And I started planning something Samuel would never see coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. I just replayed Samuel's words, not just the ultimatum, but the way he delivered it. That casual tone, like he was asking me to pick up groceries. The prepared quality of his speech, like he'd rehearsed it. The immediate escalation to threats. This wasn't spontaneous. This was calculated. Sunday morning, I met Rachel for our usual trail run, 7 miles around the reservoir. Usually, we just talked about work, about nothing important. Today, I unloaded everything before we'd even finished the first mile. Rachel stopped mid-stride, hands on her knees, breathing hard, but it wasn't from exertion. "Say that again." "He wants what?" "The condo, the car, access to my savings. All of it in his name, or at minimum, joint ownership." 3 months before the wedding, she straightened up, her face shifting into something I'd rarely seen. Pure, unadulterated anger. "Lily, that's not a partnership request. That's a heist with a ceremony attached." I tried to explain. "He's making it sound reasonable, like I'm paranoid for hesitating." "Of course he is." Rachel grabbed my shoulders, made me look at her. "My sister went through this exact thing. Her ex wanted his name on her car and condo to prove she trusted him. She did it because she loved him, because she didn't want him to feel like she was holding back. 2 years later, during the divorce, she had to buy him out of assets he never contributed a single cent toward. He walked away with $80,000 of her equity. A cold dread settled in my chest. "Rachel, I don't know what to do. You call a lawyer today? Not a wedding planner, not a therapist, a lawyer who specializes in asset protection. And you don't tell Samuel you're doing it." We finished the run in silence, but my mind was racing. By the time I got home, Samuel had left for one of his networking coffee meetings that never resulted in actual work. I showered, changed, and made a phone call I never thought I'd be making 3 months before my wedding. Monday morning, 9 a.m. I called Jonathan Hastings, a family law partner at my firm. 62 years old, brilliant, and brutally honest. We'd worked on cases where real estate intersected with divorce, and I always respected his perspective. "Lily, this is unexpected," he said when his assistant put me through. "What can I do for you?" I explained the situation as clinically as possible, keeping all emotion out of my voice, presenting it like a case file. The ultimatum, the timing, the specific assets Samuel wanted, how he'd framed my hesitation as a character flaw. The silence on the other end felt like an eternity. "Jonathan, I'm here." His voice had changed, taken on a weariness that made him sound every one of his 62 years. Lily, I've been practicing family law for 30 years. I've seen this scenario play out more times than I can count, and it never ends well for the person with assets. So what does that mean legally? It means if you transfer these assets before marriage, you're making a gift with zero legal protection. You break up, you have no recourse. After marriage, they become marital property, split in a divorce. Either way, you're massively exposed. My attorney brain kicked in. What about the timing? Does that matter? The timing, Jonathan said, his voice firming, is the biggest red flag here. An ultimatum 3 months before a wedding, after you've paid deposits and made commitments? That's not love talking, Lily. That's strategy. That's someone who knows exactly what they're doing and is using your emotional investment and financial sunk costs as leverage. The words landed like a physical blow. What should I do? Tell him you want to consult a financial planner before making any decisions about asset transfer. Watch his reaction carefully. If he's a legitimate partner, he'll understand due diligence. If he's not, he'll escalate the pressure, make you feel guilty for being cautious. He gave me one more piece of advice before we hung up. Document everything from this point forward. Records of conversations, texts, financial contributions. If this goes sideways, you'll need proof. I spent the rest of Monday in a kind of dissociative state, the kind I recognized from particularly stressful cases. Physically present, going through the motions, but emotionally somewhere else entirely. I replayed every interaction with Samuel through this new lens Jonathan had provided. How quickly things had changed after he moved in. How my home stopped feeling like mine. How every conversation about my work became criticism disguised as concern. How he'd never once suggested we build something new together, only that I transfer what I already owned. The pattern was forming, clear and undeniable now that I was actually looking. Wednesday night, we had dinner. I'd picked up Thai food. We ate at my kitchen table, the table I'd bought, in the kitchen of the condo I'd owned for 6 years. I've been thinking about what you said, I started, carefully, about the asset transfers. Samuel looked up, his expression instantly guarded. And I want to talk to a financial advisor first. Make sure we're structuring everything properly for tax purposes, for legal protection. These are major financial decisions, and I want to make sure we're doing them right. His face changed. The guardedness shifted to something harder, colder. You're overthinking this. I'm being cautious with major assets. That's not overthinking, that's being responsible. People who love each other don't need financial advisors to trust each other. He put down his fork with more force than necessary. This is exactly what I was worried about. You're treating our marriage like a business transaction. I'm treating major financial decisions like major financial decisions. He stood up abruptly. You know what this tells me? That you don't actually want to marry me. You want a prenup, a financial advisor, probably separate bank accounts, too. That's not a marriage, Lily. That's a business arrangement where you keep all the power, and I'm just some accessory to your success. Samuel, that's not what I'm saying. You're making this complicated because you can't handle the idea of actually sharing your life with someone. You built this fortress of assets and success, and you don't actually want to let anyone in. You want a partner you can control, not an equal. He grabbed his keys and wallet. I'm going to stay at Marcus's place for a few days. Maybe you'll figure out what you actually want, because right now it's pretty clear you want a wedding more than a marriage. The door closed behind him. Not quite a slam, but close enough. I sat at that table for a long time, the food getting cold, my mind cycling through everything he'd just said. The way he'd twisted my reasonable request into a character assassination. How he'd made me feel guilty for wanting to protect assets I'd built before he even existed in my life. How quickly he'd escalated from conversation to abandonment. My phone buzzed. A text from Samuel. Staying at Marcus tonight. Need space to think about whether we're actually ready for this. Then another. It hurts that you don't trust me enough to build a real partnership. And another. I thought you were different. Guess I was wrong. Each message was designed to make me feel guilty, to make me question my judgment, to make me reach out and apologize for having boundaries. I turned off my phone, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat in my living room, with my furniture, in my home, and let myself feel what I'd been avoiding for weeks. This wasn't right. None of this was right. And something was about to happen that would prove just how wrong I'd been about Samuel Brennan. Samuel stayed at Marcus's for 2 nights. 2 nights of texts designed to make me feel guilty, to soften me up. I didn't respond. Instead, I worked late, took on extra research, stayed busy enough that I couldn't second-guess myself. Wednesday evening, I came home exhausted from a brutal commercial lease negotiation. 12 straight hours fighting over liability clauses. My feet hurt, my head throbbed. All I wanted was a glass of wine, silence, maybe a hot bath. Instead, I walked into my condo and found Samuel sprawled on my couch with his college roommate, Marcus. Sports blaring on my TV, empty beer bottles accumulating on my coffee table, leaving rings on the wood I'd carefully maintained. Samuel didn't even look up. Just said, "We're planning bachelor party details. Marcus found a place in Vegas. It's gonna be epic." I stood there, briefcase in hand, professional clothes wrinkled, waiting for something more. An apology, an explanation. Nothing. "I'm going to get some wine," I said, to no one in particular, too tired for confrontation. The open floor plan I'd loved when I bought this place. That seamless flow between living room and kitchen, the natural light. It was about to become the design choice that changed everything. Because that's when I heard Marcus's voice, carrying clearly. Have you told her about the Vegas budget yet? That's going to be expensive as hell. I froze, just inside the kitchen, hidden from view by the wall. Wine glass in hand, completely still. Samuel's laugh came next. Not the soft, almost self-deprecating laugh he used with me. This was different. Darker. More calculating. Not yet. She'll cover it. She always does. Marcus, dude, you've got her trained. My girlfriend would absolutely murder me if I pulled that. That's because your girlfriend doesn't have a paid-off condo in Cherry Creek and $100,000 in liquid savings, Samuel said, casual, like he was discussing sports scores. Lily's good for it. She works constantly anyway. Might as well benefit from it. My hand tightened on the wine glass. I set it down silently, carefully, every movement deliberate. My attorney brain kicked in. The part of me that knew evidence when I heard it. The part that understood the value of listening before reacting. Marcus's voice dropped lower, conspiratorial. And the asset transfer thing, bro? That's brilliant. Once your name's on that condo and the car, you've got real security. Even if things go sideways, you walk away with something substantial. That's thinking ahead. I know. Samuel sounded pleased with himself. My dad suggested it, actually. Everything inside me went cold. Your dad told you to do this? Yeah. He went through a messy divorce in his 30s, and his ex-wife's name wasn't on anything. He got some alimony, but that was it. He walked away broke. He told me, never marry someone with assets without protecting yourself first. If she turns out to be difficult or controlling, you're not starting from zero. It's just smart planning. I heard the clink of beer bottles, the sound of them toasting. Then Samuel added the part that made my blood turn to ice. Plus, once I have access to her savings account, I can finally launch that cryptocurrency fund I've been planning. She won't even notice if I move 50 grand into the initial investment. By the time we're married and she figures it out, it'll have doubled, hopefully tripled, and I'll be the one with the empire. She'll probably be proud of me for taking initiative. Marcus laughed, loud and genuine. That's cold, man. But I respect the hustle. And you're right. She works like 80 hours a week. Probably won't even notice the money's gone until you've already made it back. That's the plan. She's so busy with her commercial real estate cases, she barely looks at her personal accounts. I've watched her. She checks her balance maybe once a month. By the time she realizes 50,000 is missing, I'll be able to explain it as an investment in our future. I stood in my kitchen, in my condo, that I'd bought with my money, listening to my fiancé and his friend plot my financial destruction with the casual ease of people planning a vacation. They kept talking about Vegas, about expensive bottle service. But I'd stopped listening to the words. I was processing. Samuel hadn't just asked for asset transfers on a whim. His father had coached him. This was premeditated, calculated. A plan that had been forming since before Samuel even moved in. And that cryptocurrency scheme? He'd already decided to steal $50,000 from my savings. Not borrow, not ask permission. He'd been watching my banking habits, timing his access request for when he could drain my account without immediate detection. The word difficult echoed in my head. His father had warned him I might be difficult or controlling, which apparently meant objecting to financial exploitation. Standing up for myself. Protecting what I'd built. I forced myself to move, walked back through the living room like I'd heard nothing. Both of them looked up briefly, then went back to their Vegas plans. Samuel gave me a smile that would have seemed warm if I hadn't just heard what I'd heard. Long day, he asked, almost concerned. Brutal, I managed. I'm going to take a shower. I went to my bedroom, in my condo, and closed the door. Sat on the edge of my bed, feeling like someone had just handed me architectural plans for my own destruction. He'd drawn it all out. The asset transfer to secure his position, the savings drain for his crypto dreams. The entire blueprint of how Samuel Brennan planned to dismantle everything Lily Morgan had built. But he'd made one critical mistake. He'd planned this entire scheme while living in the home of a corporate attorney who'd spent 10 years learning how to protect assets, identify fraud, and document evidence. I walked into my bathroom, turned the shower as hot as it would go, and let the scalding water run over me until my skin turned red. Let it burn away the last remnants of doubt, the final threads of hope that maybe I'd misunderstood. There wasn't another explanation. There was only the truth I'd overheard in my own living room. Samuel wasn't building a life with me. He was systematically planning to strip everything I'd worked for, piece by piece. First, the asset transfer, then the savings drain. His father had taught him how to exploit someone who'd built something real, had given him the playbook for financial abuse disguised as partnership. And Samuel had already decided I was too busy, too distracted, too focused on work to notice money disappearing. That I was an easy mark because I'd chosen career over constant vigilance. I turned off the shower, wrapped myself in a towel I'd bought, in the bathroom of the condo I'd purchased alone, before Samuel Brennan ever existed in my life. The woman looking back at me in the mirror was someone I recognized. Not the version who'd been doubting herself, who'd felt guilty for wanting to protect her assets. but the version who'd worked 80-hour weeks and sacrificed everything to build something that mattered. That woman knew exactly what to do. If Samuel wanted to play strategic games with my life's work, I'd play too. But this game would have rules he didn't know existed. This game would have only one winner, and it sure as hell wasn't going to be him. I got dressed, dried my hair, and started making phone calls. First to Jonathan Hastings, leaving a voicemail about needing to discuss something urgent. Then to my building manager about lock changes. Then to Rachel, just 3 words. You were right. By the time I walked back out of my bedroom, composed and calm, I'd already started building my counterattack. Samuel looked up from the couch. Feeling better? Much better, I said. And I meant it. Samuel and Marcus left around midnight, loud, drunk, and completely oblivious to everything I'd heard. After they stumbled out, I stood in my living room, looking at the beer bottles, the rings on my coffee table, the mess they'd made of my space. Then I cleaned it all up, methodically, completely. Wiped down every surface, threw away every bottle, restored my home to exactly how it had been before they'd invaded it. It felt symbolic. Taking back my space. Erasing evidence of their presence. Thursday morning, I was at my desk by 7. Jonathan Hastings was on the phone by 8. I overheard something last night, I said, without preamble. Samuel and his friend Marcus. They were in my living room planning his bachelor party, and I heard the entire conversation from the kitchen. I told him everything, word for word, as close as I could remember. The Vegas expenses Samuel expected me to cover. The asset transfer being his father's idea. That strategy developed from his dad's divorce experience. The cryptocurrency scheme. The $50,000 Samuel planned to steal from my savings the moment he had access. The silence on Jonathan's end lasted so long I checked my phone. Jonathan, I'm here. His voice had changed completely. Lily, you need to protect everything. Today, not tomorrow, not next week. Today, what do I need to do? Change every password on every account. Bank, investment, credit cards, everything. Change every security question. If he has visibility into any accounts, remove his access immediately. Then change your locks. All of them. Entrance, deadbolts, garage access, every single lock in that condo. My pen was flying across the paper, taking notes like I'd been trained. What about documentation? Write down everything you remember from that conversation while it's fresh. Exact quotes if possible. Note the time, location, who was present. Create a spreadsheet of what you own versus what you purchased together. I'm guessing that's heavily weighted toward your assets. Take photographs of every room showing your property. Back everything up to encrypted cloud storage and send copies to me and to someone you trust completely. Rachel, perfect. Do all of this today. If this escalates to legal action, and I think it might, you'll need proof this was calculated fraud, not just a relationship dispute. I was already opening my laptop. The locks are going to be expensive. I don't care if they cost $5,000. Change them today. He has keys to your condo, and he's planning to drain your savings. You cannot let him have physical access to your space while you're protecting your accounts. By 9, I'd changed every password. By 10, I'd updated all security questions to answers Samuel would never guess. Obscure references, randomly generated phrases, layers of security that would take a determined hacker to break through. At 11, I called Patricia, my building's property manager. Patricia, I need to change all the locks in my unit today, if possible. Tomorrow at the latest. Oh, Lily, is everything okay? I'm ending my engagement. My fiancé has keys, and I need them to stop working immediately. Her voice shifted, became warmer. I understand completely. Let me call our locksmith. With the smart lock system, it's about $1,200 for everything. That's fine. Can they do it tomorrow? I'll make it a priority. Will you be home? No, but I'll give you authorization to let them in. Just please make sure it happens before end of day Friday. Consider it done. And Lily, I'm sorry you're going through this. After I hung up, I opened a new spreadsheet. One column for items I'd owned before Samuel. Another for items we'd purchased together. The condo, 100% mine, paid off. Range Rover, 100% mine, cash. Furniture, about 95% mine. Joint purchases, one high-end coffee maker for $400. A set of cookware I never used for $300. Some decorative pillows, maybe $200. A smart TV he insisted we needed, $600. Total joint purchases, $1,500. Out of an estimated $250,000 in assets within the condo. I created another spreadsheet tracking Samuel's financial contributions, $1,500 monthly for 10 months, total $15,000. Utilities, groceries. Nothing toward the mortgage that no longer existed. Nothing toward property taxes, HOA fees, nothing toward actual ownership. Then I went room by room with my phone, photographing everything. Every angle, every item, every fixture. Creating a visual record of what existed in my space before I removed Samuel from it. I encrypted everything, uploaded it, and sent copies to Jonathan and Rachel with a simple subject line, documentation. Rachel called immediately. What am I looking at? Evidence. In case Samuel tries to claim he contributed to any of my assets or has rights to anything in the condo. You're really doing this? I'm really doing this. Good. Her voice was fierce. He deserves everything that's coming to him. Friday afternoon, while Samuel was supposedly at work. You know, those coffee meetings. I made a call that felt both petty and absolutely button. It took a full 30 seconds for all the notifications to load. 87 missed calls, 62 text messages, 15 voicemails. Jesus, Rachel breathed, glancing at my screen. He completely lost it. I started reading through the texts, watching Samuel's mental state deteriorate in real time. They started arriving within an hour of my text. First, confusion. What are you talking about? Is this a joke? Call me immediately. Then more urgent confusion. Lily, I just tried my key and it doesn't work. What's going on? Call me now. Then panic. I went to the garage and all my stuff is in boxes. Please tell me this is some kind of test. Please call me. We need to talk. Then anger started bleeding through. You can't just cancel our wedding without discussing it. We paid deposits together. This is insane. We hadn't. I'd paid every single one. The messages continued, every 20 to 30 minutes for hours. Everyone's asking me what happened. What am I supposed to tell them? That you went crazy? You're making the biggest mistake of your life. We're supposed to be partners. I can't believe you're doing this over text. After everything we've been through. Then the rage fully emerged. You know what? Everyone's going to know what kind of person you really are. Controlling, incapable of trust. You're going to die alone in that condo you care about more than actual human beings. I gave up everything for you, moved into your place, dealt with your insane work hours, put up with your controlling behavior, and this is how you repay me. Rachel was reading over my shoulder. Put up with your controlling behavior? Is he serious? Keep reading, I said. It gets worse. The bargaining phase started around midnight Sunday. Lily, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said those things. Please, let's just talk face to face. We can work through this. Forget the asset thing. Let's just talk about a prenup instead. Would that make you feel better? I'll sign whatever you want. Please don't throw away what we have over money. I love you, not your condo or your car. Please just call me. Then his father's voicemail, which Rachel insisted on listening to. I put it on speaker. His father's voice was tight with cold, controlled rage. Ms. Morgan, this is Richard Brennan, Samuel's father. What you're doing is not only cruel, it's financial abuse. You manipulated my son, made him financially dependent on you, and now you're publicly abandoning him to humiliate him. You will fix this situation immediately, or you will face serious consequences. Legal consequences. I promise you that. Rachel's mouth fell open. His father literally coached him to steal your assets, and now you're the financial abuser? Projection is a hell of a thing. There were texts from Marcus, too. You're cold for doing this over text. Samuel deserves better than a corporate shark with no heart. And from numbers I didn't recognize, probably Samuel's friends. I don't know what Samuel did, but you didn't have to humiliate him like this. Canceling a wedding 3 months out, that's brutal. I hope you're happy with yourself. I scrolled through them all, feeling nothing. No guilt, no second thoughts, no desire to respond or explain. Just a distant curiosity about how someone could be so completely delusional about their own behavior. Are you going to respond? Rachel asked. No, there's nothing to say. He knows what he did. His father knows what they planned. Responding would just give him an opening to manipulate me again. Monday morning, I did something I've been planning since Friday. Something that felt petty and perfect and absolutely necessary for my own sense of closure. I called in sick to work, the first sick day I'd taken in over a year. Then I drove to Larimer Square, parked across the street from Douglas's boutique, and waited. Large coffee in hand, sunglasses on despite the overcast Denver weather. My car positioned with a perfect view of the entrance. Samuel's final fitting was scheduled for 2 p.m. I watched people walk past, watched Douglas help other customers, watched the normal rhythm of a Monday afternoon. At exactly 2 o'clock, Samuel's Honda Civic pulled up. I sat up straighter, coffee halfway to my lips. He got out of the car with that confident stride I used to find attractive. Shoulders back, chin up, like he was about to do something important. He was probably planning to use this fitting as a sympathy story later. My crazy ex canceled our wedding, but at least I'll look good in this suit eventually when I find someone better. He walked into the boutique. I checked my watch. 2:03. At 2:06, the door burst open. Samuel came storming out, phone already at his ear, face dark red with rage. Even from across the street, with my windows up, I could hear him screaming. What do you mean donated? He was pacing the sidewalk, gestures wild, completely unraveling in public. People walking past were staring. I don't care who technically paid for it. That's my suit. My wedding suit. More pacing, more screaming into his phone. Get it back right now, or I'm calling the police. This is theft. I took a sip of my coffee, watching the show. Then something happened that I hadn't anticipated, something that made the entire situation absolutely perfect. A man walked out of the boutique behind Samuel. Late 40s, military posture, close-cropped hair going gray at the temples. And he was wearing the suit. Samuel's suit. The charcoal Tom Ford with the burgundy lining. The man stopped in front of Douglas's shop window, looking at his reflection with an expression I recognized, the kind of wonder that comes from seeing yourself as someone you'd forgotten you could be. He touched the lapels gently, like he was afraid it might disappear. turned slightly to see the fit from different angles. Stood taller, shoulders back, chin up. The suit transformed him. Douglas came out of the shop, walked over to the man, shook his hand warmly, said something I couldn't hear that made the man smile. A real smile. Genuine and grateful. That's when Samuel turned around and saw him. I watched his face go through the most remarkable transformation. Confusion first. Why is someone wearing a suit that looks exactly like mine? Then recognition. My suit. Then pure, incandescent rage. That's my suit, he screamed across the sidewalk. Several people stopped walking. A couple pulled out their phones, probably thinking they were about to witness a fight. Douglas stepped between Samuel and the veteran immediately, one hand up in a calming gesture. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments. Douglas's voice was calm, professional, in control. This suit was donated by the person who purchased it. Samuel's voice getting louder. I don't care about his interview. That's my wedding suit. The veteran. I caught Douglas saying, Mr. Patterson, looked uncomfortable, started to say something. Douglas cut him off firmly. You absolutely will not give it back. The suit is yours. Earned and deserved. My phone started ringing. I looked down and saw Samuel's name. Looked back up and watched him across the street. Phone pressed to his ear, staring at the boutique entrance like I might materialize if he willed it hard enough. I declined the call. Watched him look at his phone in disbelief. Then dial again. Declined it again. He tried a third time, then a fourth. Each time I watched his movements become more agitated, more frantic. Finally, he screamed at no one in particular. You can't do this to me. That suit cost $5,000. Douglas raised one eyebrow. I could see it clearly from across the street. That perfect expression of devastating calm. You're welcome to pursue legal action. However, Ms. Morgan provided extensive documentation proving she paid for the entire ensemble. You'll be suing the person who purchased it for donating their own property. I encourage you to consult an attorney about the likely outcome. The small crowd that had gathered was watching with open interest now. Someone was definitely filming. Samuel stood there, face red, fists clenched, looking between Douglas, Mr. Patterson in his suit, and the people staring at him. Then he turned and stormed back to his Honda Civic, the 15-year-old car he'd been driving when we met, that had sat mostly unused in my garage for 10 months while he drove my Range Rover everywhere. He got in, slammed the door, and peeled out so aggressively his tires squealed. I watched him disappear, then looked back at the boutique. Mr. Patterson was going back inside with Douglas. Both of them talking, the veteran still touching the jacket like he couldn't quite believe it was real. I finished my coffee, started my car, and drove home. The best part wasn't Samuel's public humiliation, though I'd be lying if I said that didn't feel satisfying. The best part was knowing that right then, a good man was wearing that $5,000 suit. A man who would wear it with honor to a job interview, who would use it to rebuild his life, who deserved it infinitely more than Samuel ever had. Sometimes revenge isn't about destruction. Sometimes it's about making sure something beautiful ends up in the right hands. When I got back to my condo that afternoon, I felt lighter than I had in months. Watching Samuel unravel on that sidewalk, watching Mr. Patterson walk away in that suit with dignity and hope, it had been the closure I needed. But Samuel wasn't done. Not even close. By Tuesday morning, my phone was filling up with a different kind of message. Not from Samuel, but from mutual acquaintances, people from my building, even a few distant colleagues. The smear campaign had begun. Samuel's social media had transformed overnight into a performance of heartbreak. Cryptic posts appeared every few hours. Sometimes you discover someone's true colors when you ask them to treat you as an equal partner. Narcissists weaponize their success to control and discard people who genuinely love them. Financial abuse is real, and it's not always the man doing it to the woman. Each post got dozens of sympathetic comments. His friends piled on, adding their own observations about how I'd always seemed cold, never really fit with Samuel's warm energy. One college friend posted, I always thought there was something off about her. Too focused on money, not enough on the relationship. Another, Samuel dodged a bullet. Anyone who cancels a wedding over asset protection doesn't understand what marriage means. The narrative was carefully constructed, and it was spreading. I was the controlling corporate shark who'd manipulated Samuel, made him financially dependent, then cruelly discarded him when he'd asked for basic respect. I'd stolen his wedding suit out of spite. I'd canceled everything without discussion, proving my domineering nature. People I barely knew started calling. Mrs. Chin from my building's social committee. Lily, I heard what happened. I'm disappointed in how you handled it. That poor man seemed so devoted to you. A paralegal from another firm. Is it true you kicked Samuel out and donated his belongings without even talking to him? Even my dry cleaner, making awkward small talk. I heard about your breakup. Seems like it got messy. I didn't defend myself to any of them. What was I supposed to say? Actually, he was planning to steal $50,000 from my savings. They wouldn't believe me. Samuel's version was already set in their minds. Rachel was furious. You need to tell people what actually happened. He's destroying your reputation. Let him, I said. The people who matter will figure it out. And the people who don't matter, don't matter. But Rachel was right about one thing. The story was spreading through Denver's professional community faster than I'd anticipated. By Wednesday, I'd gotten 3 uncomfortable conversations at work. That's when Margaret Keating stepped in. Margaret was our senior partner, 68 years old, with silver hair and a sharp bob and a reputation for absolutely destroying opposing counsel in depositions. She'd been practicing family law for 4 decades and had exactly 0 patience for financial manipulation in relationships. Thursday afternoon, she appeared in my office doorway. "Close your door," she said. I did. "I've been hearing things," Margaret said, settling into the chair across from my desk. "About you and your ex-fiancé. About how you supposedly abused him financially and stole his wedding suit." My stomach dropped. "Margaret, She held up one hand. "I'm not asking you to defend yourself. I'm telling you that I've already started correcting the record." "What?" "Last night at a bar association mixer, someone brought up your situation, tried to paint you as some kind of monster. So, I told them the truth." Margaret's expression was steel. "That Samuel Brennan tried to manipulate you into transferring your condo, car, and 6-figure savings before marriage. That you overheard him planning to steal $50,000 for a cryptocurrency scheme. That you protected your assets and ended the engagement. That the suit donation was because you paid for it entirely while he lived rent-free for 10 months. I stared at her. "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did. I've spent 40 years watching women get financially exploited in marriages and divorces. I've seen it play out 100 different ways, and it always starts like this, with a man who sees a successful woman as an opportunity rather than a partner." She leaned forward. "You did exactly the right thing, Lily. And I'm not going to sit quietly while some con artist and his enabling father try to destroy your reputation for protecting what you built." My throat felt tight. "Thank you. Don't thank me. Just know that the story is shifting. People are starting to ask questions, and Samuel's version is falling apart under basic scrutiny." He was right. By the end of the week, people who'd initially been sympathetic to Samuel were calling to apologize. "I'm so sorry, Lily. I didn't have the full story. I should have asked you directly instead of believing gossip. What he tried to do. That's horrible. I'm glad you got out." But the most unexpected call came 2 weeks after the boutique incident. My phone rang with a number I recognized. Marcus, Samuel's college roommate. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity won. "Lily, this is Marcus, Samuel's friend. Can we talk? Can I buy you coffee?" Every instinct told me to decline, but something in his voice made me pause. "Why?" "Because I need to apologize. And I need to tell you something about what's happening." We met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, neutral territory. Marcus looked uncomfortable, like he was about to confess something he'd been carrying for too long. "I need to apologize," he started, "for my part in encouraging Samuel. For being in your living room that night talking about his plans like it was all some game." I stayed quiet, letting him continue. "Samuel's telling everyone you're a monster, that you financially abused him, controlled him, humiliated him. But I was there. I heard him talking about the asset transfer plan, the cryptocurrency fund, his dad's coaching. I know what he was actually planning to do. So why are you here?" Marcus ran his hand through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. "Because I've seen him do this before. In college, he had a girlfriend named Ashley. Convinced her to co-sign a business loan for some startup he wanted to launch. She trusted him completely. He defaulted within 6 months, destroyed her credit score. She spent years rebuilding, couldn't get approved for an apartment, had to move back in with her parents." My chest tightened. "And you knew about this?" "I knew. I thought it was just a stupid mistake he made when he was young. But then watching what he tried to do to you, how he's lying about everything now, painting himself as the victim, I realized he was just running a more sophisticated version of the same scheme. He didn't change. He just got better at it." "Why tell me this now?" "Because his dad found a lawyer. They're planning to sue you for the wedding suit and emotional distress. They're going to claim you stole his property, publicly humiliated him, and I can't stay silent about that." Marcus pulled out his phone, showed me a text thread with Samuel from 2 weeks ago, before the boutique incident. Samuel bragging about the crypto fund he was going to launch with Lily's money, about how she'd never noticed 50 grand missing, about how once his name was on her assets, he'd have real security. "I'm willing to testify," Marcus said, "if it goes to court, about what I heard him say, what his actual plans were. It's the least I can do." I took photos of the text thread with my own phone. "Thank you. This helps. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner. I should have warned you before it got this far." After Marcus left, I sat in that coffee shop for a long time, thinking about Ashley, about how many other women there might have been, about patterns of behavior that don't change, just evolve. Then I called Jonathan Hastings. "We might have a lawsuit coming," I told him. "But we also have a witness willing to testify about what Samuel was actually planning." "Good. Let me handle this." Within 48 hours, Jonathan had drafted a legal letter that was essentially a surgical strike. 8 pages outlining exactly what discovery would reveal if Samuel proceeded with litigation. Documented evidence of his plan to drain my savings for unauthorized cryptocurrency investment. Testimony from multiple witnesses about the asset transfer scheme being premeditated. Proof that I'd paid for all wedding expenses, including the disputed suit. Bank records showing Samuel's minimal contributions to household expenses. A proposed countersuit for attempted financial fraud and coercion. The letter's conclusion was devastating. Should your client proceed with litigation, please be advised that Ms. Morgan is a corporate real estate attorney with extensive trial experience and unlimited access to expert witnesses regarding financial manipulation in intimate relationships. Discovery will be invasive, thorough, and costly for your client. We encourage you to advise Mr. Brennan accordingly. Jonathan sent it on a Tuesday. By Friday, Samuel's attorney had withdrawn from the case. Samuel's father called me directly one last time. His voice was tight, with barely controlled rage. You think you've won? You think destroying my son's reputation makes you powerful, but everyone will eventually see what you really are. I kept my voice level. Everyone already sees what your son really is. That's precisely the problem. You coached him to exploit me, and now you're angry it didn't work. You have no idea what you're talking about. I have recordings of your son discussing the exact strategy you taught him. I have witnesses. I have documentation. If you contact me again, I'll add harassment to the countersuit. Are we clear? Silence. Then the call ended. I blocked both their numbers and never heard from either of them again. The lawsuit threat evaporated completely, and slowly, my life started returning to something resembling normal. Except it wasn't the same normal. It was better, because I'd learned something Samuel and his father never expected me to learn. That protecting yourself isn't selfish. And that sometimes, the people who call you cold are just angry you won't let them rob you blind. The weeks after blocking Samuel and his father were strange. Not difficult, exactly, just strange. Like adjusting to silence after living next to construction noise for months. I threw myself into work, but it felt different, lighter. I wasn't coming home to someone who resented my success, wasn't defending my career choices, wasn't monitoring my bank accounts for unauthorized transfers. My condo felt like mine again. I rearranged furniture back to where I'd originally had it. Donated the expensive pieces Samuel had brought. Replaced the cryptocurrency magazines on my coffee table with books I'd been meaning to read for years. Rachel came over one Friday night. You seem different, she said. Lighter. Like you've been holding your breath for a year and finally exhaled. She wasn't wrong. 3 months after the breakup, Margaret called me into her office. Close the door, she said, and my stomach dropped. That tone usually meant bad news. But Margaret was smiling. The partnership committee met yesterday. We'd like to offer you junior partner, effective immediately. I stared at her. I thought that wasn't happening until next year. It wasn't. But I made the case that your judgment under personal pressure, the way you handled the situation with Samuel, demonstrated exactly the kind of clear thinking and self-protection we value in partners. You didn't let emotion cloud your judgment. You documented everything, protected your assets, and handled the aftermath with professionalism. The committee agreed. Margaret, I don't know what to say. Say yes, and then get back to work. The Henderson commercial lease isn't going to negotiate itself. I said yes. That weekend, Rachel and I booked a trip to Portugal. 3 weeks in September. Small coastal towns, seafood, wine, hiking along cliffs. For 3 weeks, I didn't check my work email obsessively. Didn't think about Samuel. Just existed in the moment. This is who you're supposed to be, Rachel said one afternoon on a beach. Not the version who was constantly monitoring someone else's moods and schemes. I forgot what peace felt like. Don't forget again. When I got back to Denver, my condo felt even more like home. I'd missed it in a way I never had when Samuel was living there. Missed the quiet. Missed having a space that was entirely my own. Then, 6 months after canceling the wedding, something arrived that changed everything. A large envelope came to my office with Douglas's boutique return address. Inside was a note. Thought you should see this. And a card. The handwriting was careful, deliberate. The card had a simple design, just thank you on the front. Inside, the message read, Miss Morgan, Mr. Douglas gave me your work address and said it would be okay to write to you. I'm James Patterson, the veteran who received the suit you donated. I wanted you to know what that gift meant to me. I got the corporate security job I interviewed for, the one I wore your suit to. I've been promoted twice in 6 months. I'm now managing security for an entire tech campus. But more than the job, that suit gave me something I'd lost. Confidence, dignity, the feeling that I belonged in professional spaces again. I don't know what happened between you and whoever that suit was originally for, and it's not my business, but I want you to know that your generosity changed my life. I'm including a photo from my first day of work. I wanted you to see what your gift made possible. With deepest gratitude, James Patterson. The photo showed a man standing tall in front of a corporate building, wearing the charcoal Tom Ford suit with burgundy lining. The same suit Samuel had spent hours selecting. But on James, it looked different. It looked earned. He stood with his shoulders back, chin up, eyes clear. He looked like he belonged exactly where he was. I sat at my desk holding that card for a long time, feeling something shift in my chest. Not just satisfaction that the suit had gone to someone who deserved it, but genuine joy that something good had come from my worst judgment call. I framed the photo and hung it in my home office, right above my desk. During late nights, I'd look up and see James Patterson, standing proud in that suit, and remember that sometimes the best revenge is making sure something beautiful ends up in the right hands. 9 months after the breakup, I was having lunch with a client downtown when I saw him. Samuel, sitting at a table near the window with a woman I didn't recognize. She was attractive, professional looking, laughing at something he'd said. And I watched him use the exact same gestures he'd used with me, leaning in attentively, touching her hand across the table. That smile that made you feel special. My first instinct was to leave, but something stopped me. I watched them for a moment, saw how she looked at him, the same way I probably had in those early months. Like he was genuinely interested in her as a person, not as an asset. When she got up to use the restroom, I did something impulsive. I followed her. She was washing her hands when I approached. This is going to sound completely insane, but are you dating Samuel Brennan? She turned, surprised but not hostile. Yes, for about 4 months now. What? I was engaged to him until about 8 months ago. I'm not here to cause drama, but please be very careful with your financial information. Don't let him pressure you into transferring assets or giving him access to your accounts. And if he ever gives you an ultimatum about proving your love through property transfer, please, run. She stared at me. He told me you were a controlling ex who couldn't handle his ambition. I'm sure he did. I pulled out one of my business cards, wrote my cell number on the back. I'm just asking you to protect yourself. Trust your instincts. If anything feels off, if you ever need to talk to someone who's been through it, call me. She took the card slowly, something shifting in her expression. Thank you for this. I left the restaurant with my heart pounding, unsure if I'd done the right thing, but knowing I'd done something. 2 weeks later, my office phone rang. This is Victoria Chin. We met briefly at a restaurant. I need to talk to you. We met for coffee, and Victoria came prepared. She'd done research after our encounter. Found Samuel's college girlfriend, Ashley, on social media. Learned about the business loan that destroyed her credit. Found the woman before me, who he'd tried to get on his apartment lease. Found another woman who'd let him add his name to her car insurance temporarily, then spent months trying to remove him. There's a pattern, Victoria said, spreading papers across the coffee shop table like evidence. He targets financially independent women, moves in quickly, then systematically tries to get his name on their assets. With you, he got sophisticated. The wedding ultimatum was leverage. But it's always the same goal. You broke up with him? Yesterday. He screamed at me for over an hour. Said I was paranoid, that you'd poison me against him. Then he said something revealing. I would have made you wealthy anyway. Like access to my money was always the plan, and he was doing me some kind of favor. Victoria pushed a folder across the table. I documented everything. His attempts to get my banking information, conversations about adding his name to my car title, pressure to let him manage my investment accounts. If you ever need this for anything legal, it's yours. I took the folder, feeling something like vindication, not just for me, but for Ashley and all the others. Thank you for warning me, Victoria said. You probably saved me from making a terrible mistake. Someone should have warned me, I replied. I'm just glad I listened. October arrived, the month that should have been my wedding. Rachel insisted we go to the Botanic Gardens on what would have been my wedding day. Trust me, she said when I protested. We arrived to find a wedding in progress. The young teachers, the ones I'd anonymously sponsored with the $8,000 venue contribution. The ceremony was simple, beautiful. The bride was crying during her vows. Real tears, not performance tears. The groom held her hands like she was something precious and rare. Their friends and family filled the garden with genuine laughter and joy. Rachel and I watched from a distance. And something in my chest that had been tight for months finally loosened. That's what it's supposed to look like, Rachel said quietly. Yeah. Jennifer, the venue coordinator, spotted us. Lily, I'd hoped you might come. She smiled. The bride specifically asked me to thank you. She said someone believing in their love when they couldn't afford to celebrate it properly meant more than the money. I watched the couple's first dance, and for the first time since the boutique incident, I cried. Not from sadness or regret, but from something like closure. My money had created actual joy instead of funding a fraudulent performance. And somehow, that made everything worth it. Rachel and I left the Botanic Gardens as the sun was setting. The newlyweds still dancing. The whole drive home, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not sadness that it wasn't my wedding, but genuine happiness that my money had created something real and beautiful. You okay? Rachel asked. Yeah, I said. I really am. And I was. The weeks and months that followed blurred together in the best possible way. Not the exciting blur of crisis and drama, but the peaceful blur of a life finally running smoothly. Work consumed me, but in a healthy way this time. The junior partnership came with major clients. Complex cases that required my full attention. Margaret pulled me aside one afternoon. You're different lately. Different how? More confident. Like you're not carrying extra weight anymore. She was right. Without Samuel's constant criticism, without monitoring my accounts for unauthorized transfers, without defending my career choices every evening, I had energy I'd forgotten existed. I mentored younger associates, just like Margaret had mentored me. When a 26-year-old named Emily came to me, worried about her boyfriend's sudden interest in her inheritance, I didn't hesitate. Has he asked you to add his name to anything? Bank accounts, property titles. Emily nodded slowly. He said it would show I trust him. Don't do it. And if he makes it an ultimatum? That tells you everything you need to know about what he actually wants. A month later, Emily came back to thank me. She'd ended the relationship. You probably saved me from making a huge mistake. Someone should have warned me earlier, I replied. I'm just glad I can warn you. Rachel and I started hosting monthly dinners at my condo. Just single, professional women, sharing resources and support. An informal network where we could talk honestly about red flags, financial independence, and navigating dating while successful. At one dinner, a tax attorney named Michelle said something that stuck with me. I used to think having money would make relationships easier. Turns out it just reveals who people really are faster. Everyone nodded. A year after canceling the wedding, Margaret called me into her office with news. Samuel moved back to Phoenix. He's working at a car dealership now. How do you know this? I have friends everywhere, she smiled, including one whose daughter is dating someone who works with Samuel's father. Apparently, Samuel's currently dating a woman who owns a catering business. His father's already coaching him on how to get his name on her commercial kitchen lease. I waited for anger or anxiety, or the urge to warn this woman I'd never met. But I felt nothing except pity for her, and hoped she'd figure it out before it was too late. I warned Victoria, I said. I documented everything. His pattern is visible to anyone who looks. I can't save everyone from him, Margaret. Some lessons people have to learn themselves. That's very mature of you. I just want him to be someone else's problem, not mine. And he was. Samuel became irrelevant. A closed chapter. A cautionary tale I occasionally shared with younger women, but not something I carried with me anymore. My dating life remained minimal, but by choice. I went out occasionally, met interesting people, but I developed an almost allergic reaction to certain red flags. One guy on a second date looked around my condo and said, "This is awfully nice for one person. Seems like a waste." I ended the date immediately. Another man, during a third date dinner, mentioned I didn't really need such an expensive car and could probably downsize to something more practical. I blocked his number before dessert arrived. Rachel found this hilarious. You've developed a zero-tolerance policy. I've developed standards, I replied. There's a difference. Fair enough. 18 months after the breakup, Douglas from the boutique called. Lily, I have an unusual request. Mr. Patterson, the veteran who received the suit, has been asking if I could connect you too. He wants to take you to lunch to say thank you properly. Would you be comfortable with that? My first instinct was to decline. The whole situation felt potentially awkward, but something made me hesitate. Let me think about it. I called Rachel. What do you think? I think it might give you closure on the one good thing that came from that whole mess. And if it's weird, you can leave. I agreed to lunch. James Patterson showed up with his wife, Karen, which immediately made everything less awkward. They were both in their late 40s, warm and genuine in a way that felt instantly comfortable. I don't know the full story of what happened, James said, and I didn't want to pry, but I need you to know what that suit did for me. He explained how he'd been out of work for 8 months after the military, applying for corporate security, but getting nowhere. How wearing that Tom Ford suit to the interview had changed everything. Not just how others saw him, but how he saw himself. I'd been feeling invisible, he said, like my military experience didn't count in the civilian world. But when I put on that suit and looked in the mirror, I saw someone who belonged in corporate spaces. Someone professional. Someone valuable. Karen reached across the table and squeezed my hand. He came home that day and cried. Said a stranger had given him dignity when he was running out of hope. It wasn't just the job, James continued, though I did get that position, and I've been promoted twice. It was getting my confidence back. That suit became my interview uniform. Every important meeting, every promotion discussion, I wear it. It reminds me that I deserve to be there. We stayed for 3 hours, talking about everything except Samuel. They told me about their daughter, Karen's work as a teacher, their plans to travel. Before we left, Karen said, I know this might sound strange, but we'd love to stay in touch. You gave James something precious when you didn't have to. That matters. They became real friends. The kind who invited me to their daughter's graduation, who texted me photos of their vacation, who genuinely cared about my life. James and Karen reminded me that good people existed. People who valued gifts without trying to manipulate the giver. 2 years after I changed those locks, I woke up on a random Tuesday morning and realized something had shifted. I made coffee in my kitchen, looking out at the Denver skyline through windows I'd chosen. The morning light hit the hardwood floors exactly right, creating patterns I'd noticed 1,000 times, but somehow appreciated more deeply now. I hadn't thought about Samuel in weeks. Not with anger, or regret, or even curiosity. He'd simply become irrelevant. A person who used to exist in my life, but didn't anymore. I looked around my condo. Every piece of furniture I'd chosen. Every bit of art I'd bought. The minimalist aesthetic that was mine, not compromised by someone else's preferences. The office where I worked late and I. GHDS on cases I cared about. The bedroom where I slept soundly without worrying about someone plotting to drain my accounts. My Range Rover sat in the garage, paid off and well-maintained. My savings account had grown back past 6 figures, then kept growing. My career was exactly where I wanted it. Challenging work, respected colleagues, junior partner on track for senior partner in a few years. Most importantly, I learned to trust my instincts again. To hear those warning bells and actually listen, instead of explaining them away. To recognize manipulation before it took root. To understand that protecting what I'd built wasn't selfish. It was essential. That morning, drinking coffee in my peaceful home, I finally understood what my mother had tried to teach me. Wealth isn't just about money. It's about dignity, boundaries, self-respect. The wisdom to recognize when someone wants to take rather than build. The courage to walk away from people who see you as an opportunity instead of a partner. I kept all of that. Protected all of that. Built a life that was entirely mine. And somewhere across town, James Patterson was probably getting ready for work, putting on that charcoal Tom Ford suit with burgundy lining, standing a little taller because of it. Something good had come from my worst judgment call. I looked up at the framed photo above my desk. James on his first day of work, proud and confident in exactly where he belonged. Real revenge wasn't about destruction or humiliation or public spectacles. Real revenge was refusing to be the victim someone had planned for me to be. It was protecting what I'd built and moving forward without carrying manipulation as baggage. It was sleeping soundly every night knowing I'd chosen self-respect over social convenience. It was sitting in my own home, drinking my own coffee, living my own life, completely free from someone who'd seen me as assets to acquire instead of a person to love. That, as it turned out, was the sweetest revenge of all. I finished my coffee, got dressed for work, and left my condo with my head high. Samuel Brennan had tried to take everything I'd built. He said I kept it all, every single piece. And I'd never felt more powerful in my life. If this story of protecting what you built had you hooked until the very end, smash that like button right now. My favorite part was when Samuel saw that veteran wearing his Tom Ford suit outside the boutique. What was your favorite moment? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more empowering stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.